Greetings, Acolytes. Welcome back to the Archives. I see your tenacity and desire for more dark side knowledge has expanded. Very well. Today we are going to be exploring one of the most mysterious entities in all Star Wars galaxy. Ebbing from the very flows of time, the being as old as the very Force itself, a being of pure malevolent dark side energy. Previously, we have covered beings like the Father of Shadows and Sel Makor, who in their own right were two immensely formidable dark side entities, with the Father of Shadows, also known as Nakash, being based off very Satan himself, and forging the dark side against the will of his master, the only being in Star Wars more powerful than him, the Supreme Maker. In that video, we covered the life of Nakash, and how he has influenced the galaxy through the dark side, creating the Sith, Abeloth, the Sun, and various other beings of pure dark side energy. However, we are going to be today exploring one of his most ethereal and powerful creations, and possibly the only dark side entity in history that ever rivaled his power. More powerful than the Bedlam spirits, who in their own sense were omnipotent. More powerful than the Ones, than Tenebrae, than Sel Makor. This being is perhaps only third to Nakash and the Supreme Maker. If not, she is absolutely equal to that of Nakash. Yes, my friends, today we are going to be talking about the mysterious, the enigmatic, the embodiment of the dark side itself, the entity. Yes, my friends, her name is literally the entity. The entity was an ancient ethereal Sith spirit enslaved by Darth Barris, one of the most prominent ancient Sith lords, who helped and used her prophetic knowledge to facilitate his rise to power and ascendancy onto the Dark Council, and becoming one of the most powerful Sith of the era, on par with a being like Darth Malgus, although Malgus would eventually, of course, surpass nearly all Dark Councillors. With her powers of precognition and far-seeing, she was able to peer into the future itself. Centuries before the Great Galactic War, the main schism that divided the galaxy, with Emperor Vitiate, known to the Eternal Empire as Valkorion, driving the Jedi into near extinction and exiling them to their homeworld of Tython, nearly laying devastation to the entire galaxy, if they had not been clouded by the vision of Revan, who was influencing Vitiate in captivity. The entity, very centuries before the Great Galactic War, nearly conquered the galaxy single-handedly, with her own terrifying power, and almost eradicated the Jedi Order single-handedly, not using minions like other beings. She single-handedly almost defeated every single Jedi in the galaxy, and almost conquered it entirely. Darth Voron, another prominent Sith pureblood and half-breed of that era, said she was as old as the Force itself, meaning she would at least be alive and on celestial level like beings such as Wutsek, beings such as Nakash, and the Supreme Maker, and was a very personification of the dark side itself, being one of, if not its undisputed most powerful expression. Sometime before the Galactic War between the Galactic Republic and the Sith Empire, Darth Barris found and imprisoned the entity on Corellia. He began to feed off the spirit's power and stole all her visions of the future, from which he used to slowly construct his power base in the Empire in order that he would never be overthrown, and that he would slowly work his way up to defeating the Emperor. The entity abhorred being used this way, but could do nothing about it due to the strength of Barris's enchantments. Barris was a master at Sith alchemy and sorcery, and placed numerous amounts of enchantments on the entity to keep her bound. The entity was very unfamiliar with the world around her. The Sith and the Jedi had locked her up, and now she was experiencing the world for very little time, before being thrust into the spotlight, and being absorbed, and having her power fed on by a pure, bloodlusted Dark Councillor. Somehow, the Dark Councillor known as Darth Voron, a prominent Sith pureblood of the era, discovered that the entity was being enslaved by Barris, and worked for an unknown period of time to free her from his grip. Once he discovered how to free the Sith spirit via an ancient ritual, an opportunity in which to do so would not come until years later, with the appearance of the Second Emperor's Wrath. The First Emperor's Wrath was known as the Acolyte, a rising star of the Sith Empire, and the main character of the Old Republic if you choose the Sith Empire past, Barris's former apprentice. But Voron was not convinced that the former apprentice was actually trying to help him until he was attacked by Darth Barris's assassin on Corellia, during which the Wrath protected him. This relationship ultimately culminated into an assault on Barriss on world base. After reaching the chamber of the entity, they were confronted by a now cyborg Drog, who used a death field on Voron to prevent him from freeing the spirit and allowing her power to continue to be enslaved by Barriss. The entity then informed the Wrath that Drog's cybernetics powered the death field, and that his death would cancel it. And after a long, vicious, and ferocious duel, the Wrath beheaded Drog, releasing Voron. But before freeing the entity, Voron had her confirm that Barriss was viewing all that had transpired through her, guessing that he must have been twisting with fury. After the entity had been set free, she told the Wrath to remember to Barriss before returning to the Force itself, melding back into the dark side. This is a huge thing in Star Wars lore. Beings like Force ghosts, spirits, and ancient Sith anomalies like Tenebrae were able to meld into the Force after becoming one with it, very similar to Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda. However, the entity was a pure, nigh omnipotent god of the Force. She literally blended into the Force, sowing discord in the light. She nearly eradicated and exterminated the entire Jedi Order, nearly enacting the Great Jedi Purge. This was a being who was truly beyond any other Darksider of her time, perhaps of all time, as she lived from the very beginning of the Force, meaning she is over 13 trillion years old. She is as old as the Wills, as old as Nakash, as old as the Supreme Maker itself. She is one of the most mysterious entities in all of the Star Wars galaxy, and while there is no confirmed list of powers and abilities relating to her, due to the fact she almost exterminated the Jedi Order single-handedly, we can assume she was capable of draining the life of her opponents and using the dark side, releasing it in destructive ways. Darth Roran even commented, stating that the entity was such pure dark side energy that she was utterly beautiful. There is actually a clip that I have recently discovered in the Star Wars The Old Republic game, where in this Star Wars The Old Republic game, it details the entity being freed from her captivity. So my friends, brace yourself, grab a snack, and let us delve into the magic of this clip.
In a secret lair on this planet, Barriss has bound and indentured an ancient Sith spirit. He feeds off this spirit's power, stealing all her visions of the future. Everything he has built has come from her insights.
Why haven't you acted on this before now?
You don't think I've tried? It is the true reason I am warring here. Barriss's defenses have repelled my every attempt. Only you have the power to break into his lair. And only I know the ritual that unlocks the spirit's bonds. Deliver me to her, and we will strike the ultimate blow and cripple Barriss from within. There she is, the entity. Such pure, dark side energy. Is she not utterly beautiful?
I've never sensed anything so alive with the dark side.
Come closer. You are here to aid Barriss. Knows I cannot resist. He desecrated my resting place, where I waited for my love, your emperor. I am bound. Every extraction pains. If you fail, he will punish me for welcoming you.
Don't fear, entity. The trial is over. I know the incantation. Now it is a simple matter.
No, you do not understand. We are not alone.
At last, I've caught up to you again. I told you, I cannot be killed.
Barriss's favored apprentice. But I watched you burn to death.
You watched me burn, that's all. Barriss retrieved me. He made me whole again. Made me stronger. My eyes are no longer flesh. I see in a new way now. And the sight of you sickens and delights me. In minutes, the great Darth Vowrawn will disintegrate. Then the entity will forever be in Barriss's control.
Proof. The death field is powered by the machinery of drugs.
You can see the future. Can Lord Drag be defeated before Vauron is destroyed?
Can is certain, but will is not.
I'll clear it up. I cannot be defeated at all, let alone in time to save your friend. You chased your vengeance all this way, only to be run down by mine!
The death field dies with Drog.
Such a finish! Never felt so much pain. I fully expected to die. But I am grateful to have witnessed your destruction of that monstrosity.
Wait until you see me defeat Darth Barris.
Oh, what a thought! But let's enjoy this thoroughly first. Entity, is Barris aware of what transpired here?
Through me, the Defiler sees all of this.
Wonderful! He must be twisting with fury. Now, we set up the ritual. The final gate between you and the beyond is lifted.
Now I am forgotten again, and grateful. Remember me to the Defiler.
As you can see here, my students, as you can see clearly in this clip, this perhaps was the only entity in all of Star Wars lore that Tenebrae, Vitiate, Valkorion ever harbored immense love for. As Darth Vauron described, the entity was a pure being of dark side energy, a personification of the true malice that the dark side could bring, an embodiment of the dark side that was as old, if not older, than the Force itself. In my personal opinion, I believe that the entity is the sister of the Father of Shadows, Nakash, and that he enticed her and seduced her with the ways of the dark side, turning her into this all-powerful, force-omnipotent god very similar to Nakash, although this is purely speculation and not something you necessarily have to believe. As you can see from the quote, Tenebrae, Vitiate, Valkorion was actually the entity's love her, but who can blame him? Tenebrae, as we know, only admired power, and not only did he admire power, he feared it. Tenebrae would not allow any single person in the entire galaxy to be more powerful than him. He was terrified, mortified even, by the prospect that someone could surpass his power, eclipse it, and then in the end, defeat him. Death and the loss of power was Tenebrae's ultimate fear, and the entity was a pure personification backing up his power. It was stated in the clip that the entity waited for Tenebrae, but Vitiate never came back. Vitiate was an entity of immense dark-side power that would have rivaled the entity had he succeeded in consuming all life in the galaxy and becoming an all-out Force god. It is undisputable that Vitiate would want to learn from the entity, and even fostered a somewhat romantic relationship, although I believe that in both parties, they both did not necessarily love one another, only saw each other as not adversaries, saw each other as the purest expressions the dark side had to offer, very similar to Abeloth and Typhogem. Anyway, my friend, what did you think of this installment into our archives? Did you agree with the absolute insane power that the entity commanded, and that she possibly could be the only being that rivals the power of Nakash in terms of the dark side? Farewell, my acolytes. I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. And remember, never go into the unknown regions.